Okay, can I make sure everyone can hear me and you see my VS Code and the tutorial website? Okay, thanks. All right, so last time, um, oh, we finished the migration portion. We're talking about databases um, and why the migrations are necessary. So what we effectively did is um, we did this model portion. So now that our view, um, now that we set up this model with the data, we can then use that model in our view to then eventually merge that data with some HTML, some way to visualize that data. So that's kind of the step we are at to create to be able to create a new greeting. All right. All right. So let's wire up the view. And how we're going to do it is we need a template file, and then we're going to reference that template in our view. And then this is our model here. We're going to import our model and then use it to kind of fetch all the model, all the rows in our database table, in our greetings database table, and then return it. And then using this templating language, it's kind of like half Python. It'll kind of allow you to iterate through the data and then surround it with some HTML to present the data. So what this is going to do is see if a list of greetings was found. An empty list or no list found, then you'll do this else portion. So you'll render a paragraph that says no greetings are available. But if there is something found, then you're going to start a unordered list tag, and then within that, you're going to loop through all the greetings in your greetings list, and then add a list item tag around each message. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And the other thing to note is this threw me for a loop. The first time I recorded this, we're using a function, but as things get more complicated, the functionality of just a function is very limited. So we're going to actually transition to using a class. So we're going to update our code a bit to use a class instead of this function. Okay, so let's make sure our app is up and running. Okay, the browser is interacting with the container and it shows up in the logs. So let's first change this to a class. And then we need to import generic because now it's importing, now we're using a class and not a function. So let's do that. Uh, let's do that here. And then we no longer need this HTTP response. Get rid of that. I don't see render being used anywhere. Okay, delete the old function. But we do need the greetings. So we got to import the model. And then let's take care of this other error here. So in our uh, project URL file, it's asking to include the greetings URL, and okay, I guess over here is better. So in the greetings URL on line 5, we're calling the function that we just deleted. So we need to change that to a class. So we're going to change it to what this looks like. So I think this is our greetings URL. So we're going to update it to this new. And so this will be calling the function, the class. And this was the function that we had before. So we'll make that change. Now it looks like the errors are gone. And if we are to refresh here, it'll say that the template doesn't exist. So what we know is that we were able to get to the view, but when the view tried to look for a template, it bombed out because we didn't create it yet. So here, within our greetings folder, we are going to create a template. And I think templates is something that Django requires, maybe? I've forgotten. And then this greetings / index is just something I threw in there because I wasn't sure there might be other types of views, but knowing what I know now, that might not be necessary anymore. So I'm going to create this index HTML. So that's this file that we're referring to. We'll create it, and we're going to use this code here. So again, we're going to check if a greeting list exists, loop through it, and create these list item tags. And then if not, we're going to return a paragraph tag. So this greeting list is specified here. So I think there's a lot of magic Django, a lot of stuff Django's taking care in the background, so it looks like magic. But I think what's happening underneath the hood is that Django uses this get query set function. So you define how to get the data. So here we're saying get all the rows in the greetings table, and then save it as a greetings list. And this greetings list is what gets passed to the template. And that's the merging that happens in this picture. So like the data is coming back to the controller merges that data with a view. So after the data and the view merges, it can send back HTML file, CSS, and JS back to the browser. Okay, so now that we have this view, if we go back to the site now, did I not save? Let's see. I'll check to see if I misnamed anything. And then if not, I'm going to try and restart the server. Maybe it's not picking up new files. Greetings, index HTML. Templates, greetings, index HTML. And it's under greetings. All right, so I'm going to stop the server and see if restarting it helps. Because things are maybe compiled and cached, maybe something stale. Right there. So there was nothing on the database, and we could go to our admin. We have to create our admin user again because we deleted our database last time. So let's do that. Docker compose run apt bash into a container, which also has a database file. We'll run this to create the user, and then come back here. Should be able to log in. Huh. So these are the notes. So we're going to tell Django's admin app to help us manage our greetings resource. So in here, we'll add this bit of code. And this should allow us to manage our admin resource here. So right now, this is kind of like a administrative interface. I just want to use it to create some greetings so we can see something as a test that our template is working. Huh. All right. I'm not sure what's going on there. Oh, did we migrate? Okay. So I guess I'm not sure. I'm gonna skip over that and just build out the actual interface that will create our greetings for us in order to see um, in order to see this portion of the template working. I guess another way we could do it is to just fake it out by creating it here. But that's okay, I don't want to confuse things. All right, so let's go back to our section. So this is where we were. We're creating the view. So this is kind of the list view. We'll create our create view in a second here. Okay, we did that. We updated to a class. Okay, so now this is the class to do the create. And then after it's done creating, it needs to know where to direct the user. So we're going to say direct it to the greetings index. But in order for it to know that these URLs are related to the greetings, we need to give it the name here. All right, so let's do that. Let's create a new path in our URL. What is guess since I went Python, I should use 4. Sorry, I'm not sure why that changed. Okay. So this will allow us to go to this new and get to the create view. So let's do that. Let's create our create view in the view file. So again, we're inheriting from the Django library. These names are the same, but they're separate kind of classes. So again, we give it another template to use. This time we're telling it which model to use to create, and these are the fields we're expecting. And then, yeah. Once it's finished, it should redirect here. In order for this to work, we need this. But let's just see what error pops up. Okay, so lazy loading is not defined. We have to import it. Now it looks like it's working. If we go to new, template doesn't exist. So we need to create the template. And this is our template. So yes, create a file, create HTML. Why is it doing that? All right. I'll figure that out later. Okay, 8 spaces. That's horrible. Okay, so here's our HTML. It's a form element. So we go back here and inspect our HTML. So as a form, the browser knows that when you hit the save button or the submit and we've labeled that save, it knows to kind of take whatever's in these fields and then send it somewhere. And in the form, so because it doesn't have a URL listed, it's probably going to send the data to the same URL. So if we do this and we track what's getting sent through the network, and we do save. Oh, we still have this dot off there. That's probably why it was failing. All right, so here's the request based on the form. We sent to the same path a post, and then it died because our database is not matching our model, because this was left over from when we were talking about migrations, I think. And then this is also sent in the payload, so our message, and then this is the token that ensures that no one's hijacking our session and just sending fake data, and that's provided by this. All right, so what we need to do is blow away our database. Bring Django back up, and hopefully it'll create. Oh, maybe let's just down it, and then bring it back up. So it should generate a new database file for us. So here it is, but it's not migrated, so we need to go into the container, tell it to migrate our database, and I think now we can run this, and it should generate our admin user. That should hopefully allow us to see our greetings. So here we're going to use our created from admin, created from admin 2. So what you experience is the pain that developers had to do when before migrations, and you had to run SQL manually. And even with migrations, we're falling trapped to it when your code and your data are not in sync. But now, if we go back to greetings, we should see it, and you should see our unordered list, and each list surrounds our message. So, but those were created from the admin interface. Let's go back to where we were and clear this log, created from user interface. So here's the reverse match. It's complaining that this namespace doesn't exist. So So that's what this line is for. So let's put that in, see it working, and then take a look at the chat. Okay, so this goes into the URL. So we're going to say add this namespace. And now we'll go back here. We'll create another one. Created from user 2. Okay, so let's clear this. Save that. And you'll see our form data is posted to the same URL. Some frameworks will post it to a different URL. This is how Django did it. And then it'll redirect to the greetings, which is here, to the greetings index, which is what this line is trying to do. And rather than hard coding it, we're using this reverse lookup so that we can make use of our, we defined it to say if the URL has new or is at the root, go to this action. We should be able to go the opposite, where like, I want to get to this action, you tell me which URL the user should end up at. So it's not hard coded, so it's more dynamic and easier to maintain. So definitely make use of Django's URL routing. Okay, so that's the create, and we're basically doing more or less the same for update and delete. Okay, so let me just take a look at chat here. Okay, great, sweet. That's wonderful. Okay. All right, so let's do update and delete now. So here's what we did. And okay, so before you do that, it's good practice to allow the user to go between pages without using the URL. So we're going to provide them a link. So I think this is the index. We're going to provide a link at the end. Again, we're using that URL. We want to get to the greetings create page, and Django tell me which URL that should be. Provide that to our anchor tag, and then we should be able to auto generate a link. Did I not save? Okay. So here, if we inspect this, this is the HTML you're used to, but it was generated from this kind of Python code. So yeah. So this mixing of Python within HTML is a very common thing when you have templates, a templating engine. You want kind of like the hard-coded stuff and then the dynamic stuff. So each language has kind of a templating engine. Okay, so that link should work. And then I guess if you're really good, you'll have a link going back. But I don't know if you went through that rigor. Okay, so we're going to do the update and delete at the same time, since you're starting to hopefully understand the mechanics of it. This is repeat and rinse after a while. So again, you'll notice that we're always starting out the URL, so we're listening to the correct path, updating our view to implement what we want to do, create, update, read, delete, and then providing a view for that action. And then we're using the same model for all of the actions. Okay. All right. So let's do that. URL. Start with the URL or routes. Okay. And the difference between update and delete, then new and list, is that we actually need to know which greeting is getting updated or deleted. So that's why we need this, like, it needs to have this integer in the path that serves as an ID. So it's kind of saying update greeting with an ID of 1 or delete a greeting with an ID of 1. Okay, so that's what this is. I forgot what they're called. They're not query parameters, they're path. Yeah, I think they're just path parameters. So it's a way to kind of like um, provide, it's like an argument to a function, right? You want to provide dynamic data to your view. So I think that in this case they're called capture parameters. But anyways, yeah. All right. So let's do that. Go to our view. We need to add in these classes to support our actions. And very similar, we specify a template. We tell it which model we're using, the fields that's necessary for the model. Because when we're updating a greeting, we want to update a message. So, and then when it's successful, where do we direct the user to? So we direct it back to the list, the index. And then you notice in the delete action, you don't need the fields because you're just deleting the whole row. So that's why you don't need the fields. Yeah, so by convention, I think this is the name of the template that's used. I just renamed it to make more sense to me, but Django has the default, so just for awareness. Okay, so let's create those two views now. So in here, we'll create the update HTML. And we'll also create a delete HTML. Okay, update. So there's another form. Again, we need this. Whenever there's forms involved, we need a token to ensure that there's a valid submission. And then we're also providing a link to delete it if we wanted to. And then this is something that's provided by Django. Basically, it's to build out the form as paragraph elements based on the model. All right, so let's create the template for delete. Um, so here you actually have access to the object. So in the view, um, I guess the URL. We provide an ID. So before the view passes control, or when it's compiling the HTML to be sent, it it has this object um, variable that you can access, and that represents the the row of data um, corresponding to the ID that was passed in. Okay, so those are the two views. Uh, and then against, we're also doing more nice links for the user in the index page. So this is actually while we're looping. So for every greeting in our list, we're going to create a list element, and then we're going to create these links to allow the user to update or delete that particular element or that particular greeting. I don't think the spans are necessary, but I guess they don't hurt. Okay, so let's test this out. Refresh. Okay, line 12 of our URL file. I fat fingered something. Ah, at two brackets. No attribute update view. Line 9. Did I not save? Okay. Now everything's working. All right, so we can edit this. Edit it, update it, and it'll pass through. Okay, so again, there's a lot that's going on. Let's edit it. It'll take us to this URL with an ID of 2. And if we were to look in the database, the greeting is probably in row 2 of the database table. So here we're getting the update page, which is a form. And then when we submit it, we should be posting to somewhere, posting this data somewhere. And it gets posted to the same path, but this time we're providing some form data that the user entered. And then it gets redirected when it's accessed to the index page. Okay, so now if we were to delete it, it'll take us to this delete page. Again, we have the ID in the URL because this was the third entry in our table. And then if we were to confirm, it'll post data, and it should use the delete HTTP for maybe because it's a post and not a get. That's how it's able to know. So the first time we did it, it was a get. So Django just uses post. Other frameworks uses a delete because HTTP provides delete and then patch and put to update. But I think Django just uses post. And then once it's successful, it goes back to the index page, and again you'll see the list is that one greeting has been removed. And now if we're to create a new one, and edit this one, it will be an ID of 5. So the one that we deleted, 3, is gone. So yeah, so now you can understand how these URLs work, and it's actually pretty useful when you're troubleshooting other web apps and you're playing with the URL to kind of get you from one place to another. Okay, so we've created all of our CRUD. And I think the only thing left is for you to fork it and update a page and create a new page as your assignment. Do you have time? Okay, so I'm gonna go over this cleanup portion. I won't do it, but every project you should ignore files that you don't need to be committed, like this data. Definitely should be ignored and not committed to your repository. Any credentials, when we start logging into the database, a remote database, there's going to be credentials. So you don't want that kind of stuff in your source control. What I do is I put the development credentials in the source control to make it easier for the developers to get up and running, but production credentials definitely don't save that. And we've already done this. And here in the Docker file, we don't actually copy the entire source code in because we're using Docker Compose to kind of map the source code in. But if we want to deploy an image, we definitely want to actually copy the source code into the image, because where you're deploying it at, you're not going to have Docker Compose, and you're not going to be mounting from your hosting provider's system onto your container. So that's what that is. Right now, oh yeah, right now we're just running this command. It's good to kind of wrap this command into a script that you can copy in this. You can copy in the script, and then the requirements.txt, and then run the script. That way, it's kind of more self-documenting. Like someone who's not familiar with Python might not know what pip is. So it's just kind of extracting away and more of a self-documenting thing. Docker ignore allows you to not copy things into the container image. So your Git folder, you definitely don't need in your image. It'll reduce the image size and leave unnecessary things out of when you actually run the app in production. Okay, so I think here's just comparing the sizes. And you notice that I did Docker Compose down and up kind of often. So I normally provide a Bootstrap script so that each developer who might not be familiar with Docker and Docker Compose can just run it. And it'll go through these commands to kind of bring down containers and then build them back up. And you can also set them up with we can have a script to set up. So things like migrating the database, adding the admin user, those things can be automated. And then also when we actually have a database container, um, we can clear out the data. Right now, I've just been deleting this file. We can, if we were to stick with SQLite, we can put in a command to kind of like delete this file to make sure there's no stagnant data, or like what we encountered in the beginning, where the database had an extra column with author, and the code just didn't match. So a script like this is useful to kind of get back to a clean state, um, so you can start your new feature and not have any artifacts from the previous feature. So here it's showing one way. Because it's SQLite, you just remove the file. But if it's a database container, I think this volume will remove the volume that's actually holding data. And then here's how you add another step in the bootstrapping to kind of set things up. So here's migrating database, creating the admin user, and then seeds are like say you're building an email like Google Gmail, right? And you can have folders for all your emails, and one of them is an inbox. So you can use C to kind of like add some data, and then once the user starts using it, it'll start growing. So the user can add other folders like our work emails or home emails, but you want to start them off with something, so that's kind of called seeding. So you can seed them off with an inbox folder. That's probably a poor example. And then the other thing I use it for is that for developers, if we started out brand new with no data, in the beginning it would just say no greetings for no greetings are available, right? But to onboard new developers who might not be familiar, they might not know, like, oh, I got to create a greeting in order to see the rest of this code. So I might seed the database with greetings so that you can actually see a list of something and see the intent of the page. That's mostly what I use seeds for, um, so that the developer can kind of see how the app should behave if there's the right data condition. So this was simple, but as your app gets complex, where like you need, like a user, a regular user to have an account, you need a regular user to have some posts, and a regular user to have some likes and friends. You kind of want to seed that so that your developer can kind of see how the app works when there's actual users on the app, rather than having them create it each and every time for every feature. So seeding the data, this allows developers to kind of also to allow developers to kind of see how the app is supposed to work. So it's good for users. I tend to use it for developers more. And this is an example of how you would seed it. You created this YAML file. YAML is it's like JSON. They're formats, so very human readable. You don't have curly braces and parentheses as much, and you don't need double quotes. So YAML is great for human readable settings and configurations, and in this case we're using it for seeding. So this defines a greeting. This PyYAML will read this, and then Django will kind of create a greeting in the database based on what you specify in this YAML file. And then you need to run this command. Okay, I didn't go through testing. That's pretty important. I don't think I have time for this course. I'm not going through documenting. There's tools that automatically generate documentation. So uh, you can write comments, and based on the comments, it will generate your documentation for you. Uh, again, so the comments should always, aside from documentation, comments should answer why or how to use this code, not so much what it's doing. Again, I didn't implement linters, but they're a great way to learn a language. Linters will catch things in Python that someone new to Python might not know. So they're great and helps the team do code reviews without nitpicking everything. And lastly, this is what we'll be doing next time with a Postgres database. And also, I didn't implement any of these frameworks, but definitely you know about Bootstrap. You can try and do that. I didn't go into more front-end frameworks, and I'll briefly talk about it after this. And yeah, these are like next steps if you actually enjoy the Django stuff. And then yeah, when you actually have to share a Docker image, there's more to do. Okay, we did go over the admin interface. That's there if you need to use it. And then there's a shell. If you wanted to do some troubleshooting, you can actually get the greetings IDs and things. So it's there if you ever need to troubleshoot your data. But there's also other ways to troubleshoot your data. So okay, that's that. And then I'm gonna stop here, and then I'm gonna go over some architectural considerations um, and answer any questions. Um, so bear with me on the mic, and I stop this.